Hello, lovely people. I think this is working. I remember how to do this. I think I remember how to do this. I think my microphone's on. I think everything's a bit different interface-wise behind the scenes here because I finally updated my operating system on my Mac. It was, oh boy, 4 or 5 versions old, and I finally updated it. I do like all the little improvements, but Moose, I totally did. And most of the program seems to work. Do I want cheesesteak sub or chicken parm sub? Oh wow. You want a chicken parm sub? Yeah, I can tell. But I figure we're gonna use the time here to work on an illustration. I basically have promised Cave. I mean, we just wanted it done before now, but he's got 2 days left in his Kickstarter campaign, and if folks haven't checked it out, I hope they will. It's called Flavor Text Adventures. It's over on Kickstarter. He's got a few limited versions of it available over on Drive-Thru RPG, or at least he did. And he had a sort of prototype that he shared with me at Gamehole Con, and it's pretty great. But the illustration, we were talking about doing a comic. One of the things that ties the what he's doing with Flavor Text Adventures, which is essentially a narrative cookbook. It's a series of vignettes connected to a recipe with some continuing characters, specifically the chef, Alton Green. And so you got a recurring character that goes through the whole thing. Oh, thanks, Moose. You've got the chef that goes, each one of the stories, who's also the one who supposedly cooked up the recipe. And it also has, and for the creatures, such as cooking an owl bear, it's got like statistics. It's got like all sorts of game rules and elements in the book as well. He's a fan of the Middle Age. I'm a fan of his work, and so he was asking folks to contribute pieces of artwork. So I thought about doing a comic, but I feel like it would be so weird in the context of the rest of the book that I thought just doing a nice illustration of his character who has a talking weapon and Sir Quimp. And so there's choices of 2 ways of handling the illustration. I think they're going to have, for the sake of simplicity and introducing people who don't know the characters, I'm going to have them walking toward the camera. My druthers would be to have them walking away from the camera as kind of a signing off kind of image. But I think having the 2 of them walking side by side with Quimp enjoying some food that Alton prepared would be fun. And then maybe a monster or 2 in the background. I think that'd make a nice little pin-up illustration. But it's been a while since I've streamed. I took most of March off with the expectation of coming back in April, but I find that the flexibility, the 2 extra days of the week, where I'm not racing to get back here in front of the camera and then blathering for 3 hours, vamping for 3 hours while I draw stuff. It became more challenging to find things to do for the camera, things that were remotely visually interesting, because as a person who handles the writing and illustration of everything that I work on, it's often not something that I don't often just say, here's the drawing part of it, or here's the writing part of it, or here's the business part of it. I'm juggling back those things all the time, and so for 3 dedicated hours, or initially 4 dedicated hours of just drawing in front of the camera or sculpting in front of the camera, it became more difficult. And also juggling the conversation while trying to do those things and trying to stay focused. One of the things I don't think I've ever succeeded at doing is creating an illustration for the stream. Sculpting was one thing, but I would start with my sketch beforehand, and then we would try to bring that to life during the stream. But in this case, I think almost every time I created an illustration in this kind of more high pressure way, I know it doesn't feel like high pressure because no one's watching, but it feels like, like performing, and that changes the way I'm thinking about the pieces. And so I'm already getting too bogged down in anatomy. So what I'm going to do here is, I have in my Procreate layer, the size of the books that Cave's doing are 8.5 by 11. So I have an 8.5 by 11 document here, and I have a layer that's white, that's not full opacity, and then a layer set to blue. And so anything that's drawn under that layer is colored blue. So it looks like a blue, like I'm drawing with a blue line. I'm in fact just drawing with a gray line, which turns blue because it's got those layers above it. But I think coming up with a basic shape for the design. So there'll be trees, creating a canopy. We'll make the figures smaller in the frame, not like that initial sketch. Alton is a more slender character. And we'll have tree limbs. I tend to think of Quimp as a very tall character, but I don't want to undersell Alton. That's my next project. But a lot has, in the last, well, so what's happened in the last 6 weeks? Quite a bit. I was fighting with, I had some health struggles for a little while there, mostly related to sinuses and things like that. Those aren't a problem anymore. They got me on basically doing things like nasal sprays and stuff like that. Just over-the-counter stuff, and that's done the trick. So far, so good. But then I had a massive, like a real back problem. Fortunately, I could do computer work, but leaning over the art table or over an art board was very difficult. It was just that the top part of my spine where it would curve, looking down, put a ton of pressure. So they gave me some meds, and which made me a little loopy, and I couldn't drive it because it really messed up my reaction time. And the course of those meds pretty much wrapped up just as I had the South Carolina Comic-Con over the weekend, which was a lot of fun. So I'll give Quimp a bib. Alton is much more of a classic swashbuckling looking character. Not the kind of character I often draw in the middle age. Cave's on a work call. I miss unemployed Cave. So I get the basic shape of the characters. I'm going to shrink them down a bit so they're not so... Oops. Freeform. This way the trees can be a little more of a character. So, when last we left off, I was waiting on books and working on production for the Prayer's Handbook, the Kickstarter that ended in the beginning of February, I think it just ended, or maybe beginning of January, somewhere around there, like 8 weeks ago. So I've forgotten everything. I was really working on the end of the Prayer's Handbook, and it kept the project kept expanding and expanding and expanding. You know, I added more monsters, 3 more monsters based on books from Dungeons and Dragons and related material, like because the idea is it's a meta domain cleric, a cleric who thinks this is all just a game. It's the 50th anniversary of D&D. It feels like there's a lot of stuff that could dovetail into this, and so much like with Intoximancy, where we had all the Flagonborn, all the drinkware that or the drinking vessels that came to life, or like the tankard and the hobgoblet. It was just fun to create monsters that are based on drinking vessels. I was going to make monsters based on books, and there was plenty of those in fiction, but basing them specifically on plays on the D&D books. Like we have a folio fiend, we have a manual monster, and I think a nod to, I want to say it's Kobold Press and their Codex creature, because they have a creature codex. And those illustrations, that was 3 more monsters, which forced me to kind of move some stuff, take some stuff out. There's like a magic spell that didn't quite find its way in there, which was the idea of a 5-foot round platform that appears at the bottom of a character's feet, and then that floats around. So it's almost like the idea was taking the mini that everyone plays with and making the disc that they sit on, that they stand on, sort of like bringing that into the world of the game. So suddenly their mobility would be, they'd be able to fly, they'd be able to float, and they'd gain a fly speed, but their dexterity would be limited because their feet are affixed to the platform. Also, fly is a level 3 spell, I want to say, and so it was a level 2 spell, so it was like a hamstrung version of fly, which was fun, but that never found its way into the book. Tons of other little things never found their way into the book. And what happened was the next project that was coming after the Prayer's Handbook, Nibblemancy, that was supposed to come out. That campaign was going to launch in February for Zine Quest, and never did. So the plan is to launch it soon, because I spent all that time working on the Prayer's Handbook, all that extra time, and I didn't want to start the next campaign until the last one was, properly on its way. So the great news is I just received the zines for the Prayer's Handbook, and they turned out great. One of the tweaks for the book is that I have, as you can see on that bit of sheen that's on the book, you can see the ring light gets caught in there. Like the previous volumes, Intoximancy and Death Dealing, I have a spot varnish on the soft cover book, on the zine. And one of the issues is with repeated wear and tear on the book, like just putting it in my book bag and removing it again and again and again, the varnish, the spot varnish, where it comes to the edge of the page, can come up a little bit. And so with this one, I've actually brought the varnish in just a little bit, like an 1/8 of an inch. So it doesn't quite go to the edge. So I feel like that's a technical improvement. And when I reprint Death Dealing, which I'm going to have to soon, I'm going to bring all those little things in. I'm also going to include errata. There's going to be I need to have to build a page on my website and include that with upcoming books. There's not a lot of corrections that I need for Intoximancy or Death Dealing, but there are a few that are worth noting. I think I'm missing a spell save DC in one case. Oh, that's what it was. In Intoximancy, I say that the lost our screen here. With Intoximancy, I specifically say that the flagon can be used as a spell focus, and when the flagon is used as a spell focus, that's when you get your +1, +2, or +3 to, spell hit, 2 hit, and to your spell save DC. And so someone asked, well, what if there's no material component? And it was definitely meant to include things which didn't have a material component. So I need to tweak that text to say, whenever you're holding the item, you gain that benefit, not necessarily that it acts as a spell focus, and whenever you're holding the item, you also get these benefits, that sort of thing. So, and then for the deck of cards, specifically for death dealing deck, I gave them the throne property, but that apparently this, because of the wonkiness of 5e, it may be better to give it the ranged / throne property. I still think calling it it's definitely meant to be throne, and I think that's the problem with it. The natural language choice of calling it a throne object has implications that calling it a ranged object doesn't. And so I don't think there's going to be any confusion. I've never seen anybody except one person called out from a rules question that there's a gray area. So to eliminate the gray area, I would do that. There was also one other little tweak. I think there was a typo somewhere. But anywho. But I want to include those in the further updates. And the next version that I print of the Intoximancy will probably include the Ennie's logo on it somewhere, because I'm super proud of that. Okay. And when I'm working on these, I'm always flipping the illustration back and forth. I'm going to change the pencil to something smaller. In the last, while we were away, episode 300 of the Middle Age came out, which now gives me enough material to do the third collection of the Middle Age. At one point I thought that the third collection of the Middle Age would be much bigger, like 150 pages. Like I would go 50 more pages and then create a big fat volume. There's a lot of reasons not to do that. The biggest one being that larger volume, the cost is going to be significantly different than all the others. Cost is going to go up because the first one came out, I don't know, 5 years ago, and the cost of paper has gone up just because of the pandemic and greed. Not mine. I'd be happy to charge the exact same thing and continue to. You can always read my comic for free. But the cost of production's gone up. The cost of everything has gone up, and I kept the price of the book the same for volumes 1 and volumes 2, and volume 2 just didn't make as much money for me, just because I kept the price the same and all my costs went up. So the next volume is going to incorporate those because now that's even worse. So we're going to have volume 3, tentatively titled That's Better. And because that has a sarcastic implications in a couple of places in the story, I think. Oh no, sorry, it might be some. It's either that going to be good or some more questions. Well, the title's tentative, but because 300 episodes are in the can, then I can just do the Kickstarter and we can print the books. There's nothing else to do. I mean, a couple of hours of. Putting them all together and giving them page numbers inside an InDesign document. The proof process is going to be the longer part of it, just making sure I've got the pages right side up and that the printer is going to handle it. The real issue for me is that I want to keep the same printer for volume 3 as I used for the first 2. I've since found a better printer who's been doing all my role-playing game work, and I would love to switch to a new printer. But then the books would feel different. And I really want all 3 books, all 4 books, however many books there are, to feel consistent. The problem is the company that makes those books has got error-prone production. And because it's all print on demand, the books I think are hand assembled by workers, and it's just it leads to a lot of sloppiness in the production, specifically of hardcovers, because hardcovers are essentially 3 pieces of cardboard for the back covers and the spine, and they're wrapped in a printed adhesive, right? So the print is made, glue is applied to the boards, the printed cover is cut and placed glued onto the boards, and then those boards are glued onto the rest of the book via the end papers. And that process of gluing those that full color print onto the boards, there's a lot of variation, and a 1 degree shift in that cover and everything's messed up. If a fractional degree shift, and it becomes very apparent on a large book, to the point where the text on the spine could actually find its way onto the front of the book or the back of the book, like major problems. And they will ship the stuff out in almost any condition. It doesn't matter if there's if the varnish is messed up. It doesn't matter if the spine text is diagonal. They don't care. They ship it out to you, and if you complain and file paperwork, they will take photographs and document the whole thing. Then they will credit your account or reprint those for you. But their first thought, their first impulse, or the way the system is set up, they just ship it all out, and they don't care. And then they'll ship you out replacements, and a percentage of those will be messed up too. So I have to over order every time. It's not like they ship some quality printers used to print overages. Like you order 1,000 books and they would send you 1,050 or 1,025, something like that, because they would just assume that some would be damaged or some would be messed up, and that was standard in production of everything. Now they don't do that. Or very few do that. So the 300th episode of The Middle Age came out. Very happy with it. I think the next volume will include through episode 304. Eric, how are you? Yeah, I am studying Kempo Karate. I'm basically just exercising and what I like about karate is that it's gamified in a way. You level up. The belt system is a very smart way to keep people invested. There's actually a tournament at the end of April, which I am participating in. Mostly because the school has previously had tournaments in other states, like they had last one was in Connecticut, and they're trying to have more down here where I live, in Florida. And so they wanted good attendance to prove its viability. And so I mostly was signing up for that purpose. And there's two components. There is the sparring and the forms. And forms is kind of what you see. It's kind of, it's really more like a high impact Tai Chi. You're basically just showing all the various motions of combinations, kata, pinyons, things like that. As a white belt, as a starter, I don't know. I only know one. So I'm going to do that one thing, and I'm not going to spar because I don't think I've ever punched a person I haven't punched a person in like probably 35 years. And even when I'm doing just like any kind of practice in the class, it's like I'll hit any, if I accidentally graze anybody, I just fly into apologizing. Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Oh, sorry. Sweep the leg. Yeah, I am not that. I am not that. I am apologetic, and so when you sign up for a tournament, you don't have to. You choose which portions, and so I'm going to take part in the forms. I'm going to do the one thing I know how to do. Because it's me, I've practiced it 100 times, and I'll practice it 100 more. And what I like about the forms is appeals to my that there's a right and wrong way to do it. I like that because there's a right way to do it. I like that I can learn all the steps and all the moves and all the things that have to be done in a specific order in a specific way. It sometimes feels, and I like the idea of also doing the tournament because it's kind of silly. Most things in life that have traditional elements to them, I find a little bit silly. And so, and well, no, I take that back. I find most things we do at all to be incredibly silly. And this is a new kind of thing for me, so I have to kind of get over the silliness of it. But it's fun. And the first class I took, I nearly had... I had to stop because I couldn't stop sweating. My lips started to... I think a light hypoxia. You know, as someone who's physically completely out of warranty, no extended service plan at all, my body was not prepared for me to suddenly expend energy. So, but I'm feeling the benefits of doing that. If for no other reason, then I find myself not wanting to have that extra slice of cake. No, I find myself not having that extra slice of cake. I still want that slice of cake. All right, so and now. But it's fun, and there's lots of I'm sadly in the adult class with the grown-ups, but going to the class and watching the kids who are in the class before mine, that's awesome. It's great to see. They're just so excited. Part of it is the costume of it. Part of it is the ceremony of it. I'm going to move this character's head off a little bit. Like they're carrying a bunch of large eggs. Like they could be owlbear eggs or something. So their head would be like just off a little bit. We'll bend that off like that. And he gave the character quite a dashing look. Sometimes with a goatee, sometimes with just the mustache. Very Errol Flynn. I hope everyone's having a lovely Thursday. I have missed you all. David, how are you? But it's been fun. It's I recommend people try it. Like I recommend people try Nomad Sculpt. Again, the gamified part of it is what I like. I really feel like they're geniuses, and whoever cooked up the belt system for karate classes is kind of brilliant. And much like D&D and other games, World of Warcraft, everything based on D&D, you level up quickly at the beginning of the process. So, I don't know, I've been at it for 6-8 weeks, and I think every 2 or 3 months there's another belt test, which is basically just a review of what you've learned, and you get a new belt. So tomorrow I'll be a yellow belt, so watch out. 35 years, got a lot of fights in youth on the rough streets of Long Island. Mostly my combat experience mostly was with my brother. And the victor would always be the one who was angrier. There was always that great moment where someone would hit the other one a little too hard, and they'd be like, they would know they hit the other person too hard, and because the other person's reaction would be like this inflamed look, and like the other one would be like, oh no, oh no. It didn't happen a lot, but there were moments as kids where yeah. No, it will surprise no one that I have not been in a lot of fights. And that's the thing, as part of this, as learning karate, is that, or Kempo karate, is that part of it is these combinations that we're learning are meant to have practical uses. And so the very last class I took, it was the teacher, the idea was to use the moves on them, to show that this move is meant to block, this one is meant to punch, elbow, trip, and chop. And I was apologizing the whole time. Like, oh, sorry, oh, sorry, no, I'm sorry, not because I necessarily was messing up, but because I was actually coming in contact with another person. Also, I like to think I project an aura of don't come near me all the time to all people. And so, training with other people has been interesting. And there's some things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to break boards or anything like that. Not with my hands. There's one of the students is a doctor, and they don't do any of that stuff. Their hands are also their livelihood. I don't know too many people whose hands aren't their livelihood, but often you can find your, I don't know. I totally depend on my ability to hold a pencil. But so the good news was, again, the Prayers Handbook zines are in. So the first order is going to go out tomorrow. I'm super happy with how the books turned out. They are super pretty. They are packed with text. I'm going to start sharing more material from it. But things like the title page, which I feel like sets the tone of the whole book. The one thing about this, there's even like small print, like everything. There's this whole paragraph of fine print, which is just meta. So this thing is packed. I think when you see this, when you get your copy, you'll realize why this took as long as it did. Because it compared to Intoximancy and Death Dealing, this thing is like 150 pages worth of stuff squoze into one thin volume. The end result is not as much art, or I had to shrink the art, or Actually, there's more art because I put all this decoration around the edges of the pages. But there's less full color spot illustrations. I think every double page spread has at least, ooh no, there's a couple that don't. I was going to say, like, the epiphanies section is just so dense with level by level epiphanies. The idea is the metadomain cleric is a cleric who thinks this is all just a game, as I've said. And so I decided to give characters a bit of guidance. So as you level up, what are the things you're learning about the world? I don't think people should start on page 1 realizing this is a game. The game is called Dungeons and Dragons. There's X number of players. Here are all the dice. All those things shouldn't necessarily be dumped on a player at level 1, because even if you role-playing that out, the idea that this humble farmer or this aspiring rogue or this aspiring man of the cloth might somehow have their this glimpse into this whole other realm of existence. It's kind of like Neo waking up in that pod. That might be too much. So, and I don't think all players want to play it that way. Some people want to be more meta, like Abed from Community, or I don't know, like Bugs Bunny. The level of meta is really up to the individual character. This is not telling you how to play it, but trying to give you enough tools so you can play it. Like level 2, recurring theme. You start hearing epic music during combat situations. Why does nobody else seem to be able to hear it? There's lots of these epiphanies involve questions, provocations, like things that say, okay, this isn't just telling you something. This is telling you how do you. It's challenging you to come up with an answer to it, or like even if it is silly like that. Some of these things are like the problem of evil, like actual philosophical questions wrapped in the silliness of this game. If the gods the players truly care about us, why would they allow such hardship? So, enjoy D&D players. Some great. Well, as I mentioned, I was at the South Carolina Comic Con over the weekend, SC Comic Con, and they treat me so well. They're lovely people, Rob and Michelle. My table, I have a photograph over on social media. I don't know if I shared it on Discord, but half my table was the middle age, the graphic novels, and the sketchbooks and things like that, the pins. The other half of the table was all TTRPG stuff, Intoximancy and death dealing. The Prayer's Handbook wasn't there yet. I don't know how my table's going to start changing as I get more and more of these D&D books. I still want it to be at least half comics and half RPG stuff, but it's going to change the height of the table, how I have to set everything up. And by the height of the table, I mean racks, so that books can stack vertically and take up more vertical space as opposed to horizontal space because I've run out. But both the comics and the graphic novels sold equally well, which was fantastic. I had a great show, maybe the best South Carolina Comic Con I've ever had. Financially, it's not a huge windfall like some shows can be. It's not an art show. I don't think that community is there. I know some people were doing sketches and things like that, but I didn't do a single sketch all weekend and wasn't really inviting that question. I didn't have anything on the table that said, I'll do sketches. I wasn't asking people ahead of time to do sketches. That I probably should have done. I think taking pre-commissions is probably a really good idea. And I have some of those for Heroes Con. But it was great. People who come up asking about the Middle Age, the graphic novels, they'd seen it on Webtoons. Somebody came up and bought the role-playing game books because they use my Cheers cantrip from Intoximancy. They saw it over on Instagram, and they said, Cheers, I saw that. That's from Intoximancy. Yeah, I use that. Oh, that's great. I have that in my campaign. It's so much better. Their bard uses it because it's better than Vicious Mockery. So my magic is out in the world. People are using my magic. That makes me very, very happy. And I'm just hoping it gets to be more and more stuff like that. And what I love about that is all these games, all these books are meant to be tools for players and GMs. And the idea that they're out there and having a life of their own makes me extremely happy. I had a lot of large size prints of the minis, like the Intoximancer, like 3. This is the mini, but it's like 3 up, so 300% normal size. And people came up and said, can I buy that? Can I buy this sculpture? So I sold some sculptures. Someone bought one of the prayers handbooks. Again, I just had it on the table for display because I wanted people at a distance to be able to say, oh, that's D&D. You know, I had a glowing D12 that accompanied Paladone. It's a licensed D&D product. It's powered by 2 AAA batteries. It's a light up D12. I love having that on the table. It's got the D&D ampersand on it. It lights up. Not a super bright light, but still, it's there on the table. It's eye-catching. So people at a distance can visually recognize D&D in a sea of comics or a sea of other merchandise that's at the convention. But the minis were on the table again just to illustrate what I'm doing. I didn't expect anybody to purchase those sculpts. And I sold some minis. Books, books, sculpts. Yeah, overall a really good show. One mistake I'm doing right now is I'm still using this kind of sketching pencil, which I use for early stages of drawings. I should be moving on to my own brush by now, but we'll keep it going. And we'll stream until about 6 o'clock today. No break. Unless my cats start causing a ruckus. This character... it's definitely a Errol Flynn type. Oh, he's got a cape in one scene. Yeah, I can put the cape on him. So I did notice was that my the next one I'm doing, Nibblemancy, and you can see the sculpt of the Nibblemancer. This is the next book I'm doing is again for wizards. Again, I didn't want it to be a thing where I'm going down the checklist of Dungeons and Dragons classes, and I'm going to do here's my cleric, here's my rogue, here's my sorcerer, here's my warlock. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want the whole checklist. I want to do which ones I'm most excited about and have the most to say, and ideally or something that I can lean into the story of the Middle Age comic. So Intoximancy is a kind of magic that's in the Middle Age. Melvin, the wizard in our story, who we meet very early on at the tavern, classic trope, he is an Intoximancer and inspired the whole Intoximancy book, which now has a life of its own. Similarly, Nibblemancy is a type of magic that's in the story. It's practiced by the villain of the piece. And so both of these, you know, they have their origins in the Middle Age, whereas Metadomain does not. That does not appear in the Middle Age. It's got the same sense of humor and the style of the Middle Age, but it's not really part of it. I'll eventually do a fighter class, which is going to be very much more tied into basically how to play Sir Quimp, the hero of the Middle Age. And people have been asking me to do to have a subclass for a martial class. They don't count the rogue as a martial class for some reason. So after Nibblemancy, the plan is to do a fighter class like Sir Quimp, and I have plans for a druid subclass as well. At that point, that's going to take us well into the release of the new version of D&D. And I don't know what the rules of that are going to be yet. Um, and that could change what I do and the order which I do things. If the rules require significant changes, then I'll release new versions of Intoximancy and these books with the new rules. It might just be a Kickstarter that is just new versions of these things. You know, not doing a separate one for each one, but just let's do all the books, let's get them all cleaned up. I can reuse the artwork, but then style them for the 2024 rules. One of the things I saw discussed was that possibly treating reactions differently, which would affect spells like Cheers, the Cheers cantrip. Because one of the things is that there's a spell called Shocking Grasp, which if you hit the target, stuns them a bit and takes away their reaction, but there's no saving throw. You just lose your reaction. What they were looking at changing, at least what was talked about, making the legendary actions that legendary creatures in D&D, the super monsters in D&D, the bosses for the boss fights, are generally legendary creatures, and they have things called legendary actions, which is an action that they can take after a player goes. It was meant to fight the economy of the action economy, where you've got 10. Let's say you've got a group of 4 players and they're fighting a monster. The 4 players go, then the monster goes, and he can do 3 or 4 different things that are really nasty. But the players are really just setting up all these alley-oops of combinations that those 4 players have done. The first one does a stun, a setup of some kind that lets the other 3 players hit like a truck. And meanwhile, the monster's just standing there while all this is going on. The legendary actions let them kind of interrupt that sequence when the GM thinks it's best. Someone was talking about those legendary actions being tied to reaction, which would limit the number that they could have, but also make Shocking Grasp too powerful, because suddenly anyone who could hit the thing would be able to take away its legendary action. I don't know. So there's so many question marks hanging over what shape the game takes that it could force me to revisit a lot of these things and do new additions. Okay, thank goodness you're here. I was worried sick. I miss you being unemployed. I miss unemployed Cave. So, in lieu of a comic strip, I thought doing a nice illustration for Flavor Text Adventures to come back. You've got 2 days left on your campaign. Moose has already been kind enough to share the URL of the campaign. Please share it as many times as you like. Everyone, check out Flavor Text Adventures by Cave. Here's a preview book that he was kind enough to give me at Gamehole Con. The campaign's going on now, and I figured I would work on an illustration and stream and talk about what I've been up to and tell people to go support Cave. I gave him a shout out in one of my campaigns. I'm hoping it sent some people his way. But it's a combination cookbook and source book, all tied together with a narrative that is funny. It's an enjoyable read. So even if you're like me and unlikely to cook, it's a good book. So what you're saying is you procrastinated too long, so you're scraping the idea to spend weeks coming up with and doing something simple instead? You got 2 people from your referral link that you know of. You get 2 people who are smart enough to know how to use the referral link. Well, I appreciate those 2 people. Procrastinated. It's more like it's not something I don't even think this is something simpler. I just think it's a thing where more people can appreciate it. I was working on the, I sent you that little. Did I send you a sketch, or did I just explain it? Did I just describe it? It was fine, but it wasn't super funny, and it was just gonna be this comic in the middle of nowhere, and it was mostly just set up from outside of a building, and then you just meet characters who you don't know, and they're talking to each other. It's like, it felt so inside baseball that, like, here's a reference, who's this person and why is it there? It didn't make any sense. Whereas if I have a character who's walking alongside, enjoying some of the food, wearing a bib, it just makes a better illustration, I think. It just doesn't raise questions like, who is this and why is this here? But for those just joining us, it was the Prayer's Handbook. The print zines are here. James, how are you? This is a illustration of Sir Quimp and Chef Alton Green, who is a character in Flavor Text Adventures, which is on Kickstarter now. The creator of the project, Cave Geek Arts, here in chat, a lovely person, and I wanted to do an illustration for the book. I thought maybe a comic strip at one point, and I sketched some stuff out, and it just wasn't working as a comic strip. It just didn't feel like if it made sense out of context. To get this joke, you're going to have to know who these 4 characters are. The best I could come up with was the exterior of a building that the sounds of combat are heard inside, and when the sounds of combat are increasing, and you hear gasps and wheezing and all that stuff, and when you go inside, then the interior images of 2 people exhausted, specifically Quimp, from all the stuff he's eaten, and it's not comedy gold. So I'd much rather just do a cool illustration. And I thought, that's worth streaming. So episode 300 of The Middle Age came out. I mentioned it before, but you're going to get some replay information as new people come into the stream. That means I have enough material for a 3rd collection of The Middle Age. At one point I thought I would... That's leg's got to be more. To support the weight, this leg's got to be a little... where's it? A warp. Distort. Bring it in a little bit. So now I have enough material for it. I thought I was going to make it like 150 pages, but it was going to mess up the pricing of the book considerably. And so we'd have a $25... Hey! Thanks, Jim James. Cave's got a Kickstarter going. Oh yeah, that'd be great. I was using the reference that was in the volume you gave me, where he's very Errol Flynn, swashbuckly. So yeah, having something better, I'd appreciate. Yeah, it's called Flavor Text Adventures, James, and it is a... Check Facebook Messenger. Will do. It is a cookbook that is also a collection of stories, illustrated, almost a picture book, full of resources for the 5th edition of D&D. I think that I don't know if it's beholden to 5th edition. I think the stuff is easily applied to OSR stuff and, you know, other RPGs. But it's got recipes. It's all native 5e stuff, but really funny stories and excellent illustrations, except for, you know, the one I'm providing, which, you know, pretty, you know, it's my usual schlock. But he's got a cover by Larry Elmore, who is famously the red box artist for D&D, of the dragon, basically the best, maybe the best role-playing game image ever. I'm a big fan of Jeff Easley's Unearthed Arcana. When I show you the preview of the Nibblemancy cover in a little bit, I have liberally lifted the environment from that. The cover of Unearthed Arcana that Jeff Easley won is a mad wizard that's meant, some people have said it's meant to look like Gary Gygax, but it's this wizard in these robes, and they're just looking down at this book, and it's glowing gold light all over him, and he's in kind of a nondescript location, but there's all these kind of glass tubes and vials and all sorts of glass apparatus. A creature's inside one of the bulbs, and it's a luminous illustration and really a lot of fun. I would love to talk to those guys. I get the sense Kelly Freas was an influence on some of these guys. I can see it in the more I look at the pieces, the more I see that kind of effect. I also remember he's a halfling. Quimp is a human. Oh yeah, I know. This is all foreshortening. Is he a halfling? He is a halfling. I did know that. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, the good news is the chat is never hopping so much that I miss out on stuff too badly. But I do like when someone is like, I'll make sure he's appropriately halfling. I don't know, that makes me want to make the eggs even larger. I like that he's one of these classic D&D halflings who you don't know they're a halfling except by scale. I guess, I don't know when they did that. Was that 3rd edition? Where Dungeons & Dragons decided that their halflings just look like people. They're just small people. They're not in any way, you know, they don't have the large feet. They're not hobbits. Do they still have pointed ears, right? The illustration you have, I'm looking at, yeah. Yeah, I get that. It's like, but it could be a full-size human. And official D&D halflings do not have pointy ears. Yeah. So a lot of the drawings are... my approach is to draw the thing, flip it, draw it again, flip it, draw it again, and each time hopefully correct more of the things I messed up the previous time. How are we doing on time? Okay, 5 o'clock. We've been at this for an hour. Hello, lovely people. Looks like we got a few folks here on the YouTubes and a few folks on the Twitches. My name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age. I'm one of the co-hosts of Pencil to Pencil. You can catch that over on YouTube and the Facebook every Wednesday night. Pencil T.O. Pencil. It's 3 cartoonists, myself, Jamar Nicholas, and Mike Manley. We talk about comics. I'm also a TTRPG creator. I've created the Any-nominated Nibblemancy, the not yet nominated Death Dealing, and the not yet nominated The Prayers Handbooks, which I just received the zine copy now. This book, I was hoping this was going to ship in March, and the PDFs, all the digital rewards for this campaign have gone out, and that's why I felt comfortable jumping back over into working on the next project, which is Nibblemancy. But the hope is this year I'm going to have the Nibblemancy will be the next campaign. When that wraps up, on the heels of that campaign, we will launch the Kickstarter for the 3rd volume of the Middle Age. And then after that, the plan is, depending on what WotC and Hasbro do with Dungeons and Dragons, if we get any more news about the rules, the plan is to move forward with my 5th subclass book, which will be for fighters. Jimmy James, may I post a link? Oh, of course, please do. Cave, spam away. Yeah. I know Moose posted it earlier, but yeah, please let everybody know. So I'm gonna move this. I didn't mean to adjust its opacity. I meant to draw underneath the tinted layer. But I did some artwork for the South Carolina Comic-Con that I just came back from. It was their 10th anniversary, and I did an illustration a few years ago for them. I was really happy with how it turned out. I was looking at a lot of New Yorker illustrations at the time and how they were sort of trippy, and they were working on a few different levels. And so I put together an illustration I was super happy with. Where can I easily find it? I've got it. They put it on like these Slurpee cups, which is kind of a throwback to when I was a kid. I'll be right back. Talk amongst yourselves. They had to do some things because this is all like silk screened, it looks like, so they had to limit the number of colors, but I think you can see the general illustration was, let's see if I can adjust the focus here. What I really liked about this was that it was autofocus off, that it was 3 kids who were reading comics, and the images on the front of the covers of the comics. Again, I had to cheat it a little bit because there's no logos. The idea that, you know, the kids sort of becoming those characters, sort of the experience of reading, giving you a almost a first-hand experience. What I was really excited to see, that when I went back to the convention, it had been a little while since I've been there, that those characters have been used in later pieces of later illustrations by other artists. So those characters are they have a life of their own. But I was really happy with the idea that their heads are buried in a book, and so their heads are replaced by Captain America, or a Captain America type, or a Hulk type, or the young ladies holding the comic, and it's like right at the position of where the Superman or Supergirl or the super person's S would be. And that was really cool. And it turned out well, and they loved it. And so they put it on cups, they put it on a challenge coin, they put it on all these different places. I was really happy with how that turned out. Anyway, it was their 10th anniversary, and so I did a new illustration for them celebrating that, and that was on t-shirts and stuff. And but I think it included like Superman and Luffy from One Piece, and a few other characters like that. I think there's a hint of the Mandalorian in there, and Sir Quimp. So our hero was rubbing elbows with much more known characters. Nice cartoonish bite taken out of this thing. So I was very, very happy when I got the Prayer's Handbook. It's the prettiest cover yet. I'm super happy with how it turned out. It was, you know, when I print these things, it's like, you kind of have to just let go. You give the files to the printer, the book comes back, and that's your baby. That's what it is. And you really hope that they did a good job. You hope that the colors translated well, because there is definitely a shift from what you see when you're working digitally. I mean, when I'm drawing or doing any of these covers or any of these illustrations or 3D sculpts, it's just a different... Not only is it the color shift from the iPad to the desktop to the printer files, it's also the context of the thing. When you see it in the context of a printed book, in the lighting of the room, all those things just change everything about what you're seeing, how you're seeing the piece. Because, like, I can draw this character in this context right now. He's the whole world. He's just taking up the whole screen. And then a little bit later on, I'll go back and suddenly he's just this small piece of the illustration that recontextualizes it. And suddenly, is it a good illustration anymore now that it's in this different environment? Like, how does the negative space affect everything? How is the experience of reading the book? Does it feel like a natural flow? Because I treat these things like the whole thing like a story. It has to have an arc. It has to have a flow. You can't just come to a page and be like, what? There has to be a setup and a payoff, and the whole book has to be this experience. I'm really happy, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think the cover turned out sharp. This was an illustration that was going to be a little bit trippy because I knew that I wanted to break the fourth wall with the piece itself. I was changing how I was going to be doing the spot varnish. As I mentioned before, I wanted to bring the edges in so there's less chance of peeling, because unlike other books, like someone will read one of my comics or one of my graphic novels and they'll set it down, and I'm hoping it's worth rereading. But is anyone going to reread my book 4 times? Maybe once? Once, hopefully. Twice would be great. I write it to be reread. But 3 or 4 times, very unlikely. These books, they are tools. They get put in a toolbox, your backpack or your game bag, and it's referenced every time you play. So these things have to survive, and running the varnish to the edge just puts too much wear and tear on it. Marcus, nice to see you. I think so. Bringing the edges in a little bit, I think will help a lot, and I think it's barely noticeable. I notice it because I'm looking for it, but I don't think anybody else will. I think in the back cover, the Endgamer, I've had to draw in a tower that he's standing on. I put kind of a outer spacey background there with various game dice constellations. Really happy with how it turned out. I hope everyone will love it. So the first zines are going out. I don't have an ETA for the delivery of the hardcovers, except I'm expecting them soonish. I'm expecting a tracking number any day now. So I gotta move his head over a little bit because it kind of wasn't centered on his torso. Like if his shoulders are here, the head couldn't be that far over. At least the neck has to be there. And then part of it is, one of the keys to cartooning is drawing through objects. I can put the hand here, but I have to figure out where the shoulder goes underneath it. I have to figure out where the arm is and how it all connects. so that when you draw it, it makes any kind of sense. But I do like that illustration you sent for Alton. He is much less... I was looking at those illustrations, kind of the Empire Strikes Back type illustrations. I like what the new version you have. He's a bit skinnier. He's got a prominent schnoz. And I was I hope it doesn't feel like it was a procrastination cave. It was really more like, you know, so much other stuff had to happen when I lost that week due to the backache. It looks like in some of the scenes too, he's got a cape. So I'm assuming he's out and about in the world. He'll wear his cloak. I see. Those are bracers. He's wearing kind of other gloves in the other piece, so I'll give him a poofier shirt. I mentioned on Facebook that one of the things, a kid came by my table at South Carolina Comic-Con and said, basically pointed up at one of my banners and said, it looks like AI. And I was so taken aback. Where did I see a cape? Oh, maybe it's a scarf. Well, I assume he's using he had some sort of drapery to cover the Colossus, the members only Colossus. But maybe it was just because he was the other artist was making a nod to Luke Skywalker. I can make it just a scarf, or not. Tell you what, I'm gonna stick with you. No, I appreciate you telling me how to change this, because this will give me something Larry Elmore something to connect with when I meet him. Like, you work with Cave, right? Ugh. Yeah, I worked on that project too. Ugh. So if you, I mentioned it before, but the cover of Cave's Flavor Text Adventures is by the legendary Larry Elmore, and it is awesome. I meant to say the cover of legendary Cave's legendary book is by the legendary Larry Elmore. Get a few more legendaries in there. Who did your model sheet? It's quite nice. So make it look like he's looking down. I'm going to put the lower lid and anchor that to the bottom of the lower lid. That makes it look like, changes eye line. Who did your the model sheet, the drawing of Alton that you sent me? Well, it's lovely. All right. How are we doing on time? 5:15. All right, let me show you the cover. I'm gonna keep working on this cave. But again, everyone back Flavor Text Adventures by all means, please do. But I'm gonna show everyone here the cover of Joby Door, same artist who did the previous drawings of Alton. Make things official. But here's the current cover. It will change. You'll see 55 versions of the illustration so far. Again, a lot of my covers, I sculpt the figure, and then I create the painting based on the sculpt. I use a sculpt as reference. So this was the sculpt of the Nibblemancer. I think it's my favorite sculpt yet. One weakness of this design is that the apron that the character is wearing is very thin. And because of that, it prints fine at 3-up, but it's so thin that when printing it at a smaller size, at actual size, it's too thin. I didn't want to thicken the thing, so what I'm doing is I've already provided the STL files to my kind supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/Steve Conley. What I'm doing is I'm modifying the model. I just did a bit of it earlier today to create a solid structure underneath it, because there's no reason why I have to, include the parts that you're never going to see, the parts that are going to be scarred by supports anyway. So I'm creating a kind of concave area underneath there, which will hopefully give more solidity to that wall so it can be printed. The minis I've printed, they printed lovely, the face perfectly. Even with a larger nozzle at high speeds, it printed great. But the apron fell apart. That was like the one thing. And also there's a thinness to the wrist. So like if this was wrapping the model in too much supports, so I have to manually create supports so the wrist doesn't snap. I think I created a nice little action there with the hands and all that, but it just breaks the supports. The wrist is thinner than the supports, and so when something has to give, the wrist goes. Thin apron may be used to lure wildlife. Steve, do you know Joby Dort? No. Oh, although I did see at SC Comic Con, I saw Corey Godby. Oh, Steve, do you want to play in a stream play test of an adventure for Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland tonight at 8 p.m.? I'd prefer a little less notice. I'm not sure. I feel like giving me 2 hours and 40 minutes heads up might be too much time to prepare. I would love to, but unfortunately I can't. I do appreciate it. No, I have to from 7:30 to 8:30. I will be kicking and punching karate stuff. Okay, let me show you the cover of Nibblemancy. You've seen the Nibblemancer. Tons of work. This is the background that I sculpted and retouched. This is meant to be a direct nod to the background of Unearthed Arcana, the cover by Jeff Easley. He's got that crazy wizard standing in front of a mirror, in front of a window, staring into a book, and it's got all these kind of mirrored globes and everything all around him. It's pretty awesome. But I liked that kind of color palette. I liked the idea of an antique window. I put in tons of extra bevels and all sorts of stuff. I overdid it. Anywho, here's the cover so far. Now, the cookie in the upper right corner is from Publix. So I went and did research. This is intense research. So thank you, Publix. Much of this has been thoroughly researched, but I'm very happy with it so far. I think this is gonna be a good cover. There was an initial version I had. You might have seen. Might have shared somewhere. Oh, that's what it was. There's a picture of my cat, kind of being a jerk and sort of just resting his head while I'm trying to work on this thing. The character was much larger in the scene, and so it was too dominant. I want the environment. I want the things. Thin Apron is killing me. With a character grin. So, because Intoximancy, I couldn't decide on the color background for the cover. I had for the zine, I had a red background, and for the hardcover, I had a blue background. That was my solution. I knew I was going to print a hardcover. I knew I was going to print a soft cover, and I couldn't decide which one I liked better, so I decided to make each one different. And so since then, every book has had two different colored covers, two different variations. So with this one, I have a nighttime one, and this is the other cover. One of the issues with some of the illustrations, I think I see this often, is that there's kind of the cell color to things where the beard is orange, the flesh is beige, the apron is a little dirty and got stains and things like that. The sleeves are blue, and they're all these discrete areas of distinct color. And there's no sense of reflectivity. There's no sense of, there's this one thing is next to another thing, therefore it's picking up the color of that other thing. That reflected light. And with this one, I have gone through and... Is that an unintentional kind of shade effect there? Yeah, I don't think I like that. I gotta address that. Or is that just my computer, my screen? So in this case, you can see how the blue is kind of reflecting up into the beard, and the green is kind of coming into the color of the beard there. What I do on a layer above the whole thing is I set a layer with the color effect, meaning that when you paint color onto it, it doesn't affect the value, doesn't affect the lightness or the darkness of the thing. Is this cover final? The foreground baked goods should be bigger to force more perspective, depth of field. I was thinking about that, David. This is not done. This is done enough for the Kickstarter. Yeah, no, it's more like I just have to get something so that we can run the campaign, and then I'll tweak it a million times. But it has to at least be presentable. I feel like this is presentable. That pie in the front right, I feel like that needs to be larger. Also to overlap the figure a bit more to create that perspective. I also want to mix things up. There's a lot of the brighter colored desserts are on the left and everything on the right. The first one I started painting all these baked goods, and it was a lot of brown, a lot of bread color. And then the alternative was to have these pink colors. I like having that rainbow cake slice there, but I also want to have some certain things in shadow. I want some things to be bright, and the things in the shadowy things can be a little more colorful. So when they get subdued, that they don't, that they still have some. They're not stealing attention away from anything. But other than that, I'm very happy with it. But the balance of the objects is not right yet, and but close enough for government work, as the kids say. And this one was more difficult because everything has got that orangey color, but I think it's working. In this case, I made the whatever that stuff is that's coming out of the cauldron a bit brighter, like it's got a glow to it. And in the other one, I did not include that glow. I let it be more flat. I don't know which. I think the red cover will be the hardcover, and the blue cover will be the zine. Although I made the zine blue for Prayer's Handbook. Now, for Intoximancy. Oh, so let's talk about Nibblemancy for a second. One of the things I want to make sure people don't think is I don't want people to think this is Intoximancy for food. in Toximancy but food, right? Because it's not the same. Because it'd be real easy for this to be a very, very boring project. Like, if it were, because I would do one with Candymancy or something dumb like that. I could just come up with a whole bunch of stupid riffs on this concept, and you know, then it's the exact same shtick but different, slightly different flavor. The chef is wearing a cape, Howard. But you see the cape in this one is flowing, unlike the mini, which is much more flat, because it, you know, I want the model to print. Thin apron, olfactory lure. See, that's one more thing, David, you get to talk to Larry Elmore about. Like, ugh, cave, ugh. Always with a cave and his shenanigans. So Nibblemancy is very different than Intoximancy in that it's both a wizard subclass, but mechanically, Nibblemancies are constitution-based wizards, not intelligence-based wizards. The wizard class in D&D is intelligence-based. So the higher their intelligence, it affects everything they do. I think it's the amount of spells they know, it's the spell save DC, it's their spell attack power, all that stuff. Nibblemancies, the thing it does right out of the gate is it gives them proficiency with Constitution, and all their spells, all their wizard spells are based on their Constitution. So they don't have to be that bright. I think that will make for a very fun wizard. One of the downsides of D&D wizards is they almost all have to be brilliant, or the inverse is that they're played as buffoons. You know, they have a lower intelligence, and that's the way you're playing them, but that also makes them bad wizards. You're playing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. So I thought the idea would be to mechanically give players the ability to have a character who is maybe not the brightest, but could still be an effective contributor to the team and still be pretty potent. James, no, that will move product. The other element of this subclass, which I'm very happy with, is that it will invite multi-classing. Because if it's Constitution based, often a fighter or a rogue or a barbarian or, you know, these other classes can't multi-class into a spellcaster, because those multi-classing requires a high intelligence. You basically have to have prerequisite stats. You have to have like a 13 intelligence as a fighter in order to have one level as a wizard. And this will hopefully upend that, so that they don't have that requirement. So that will be in here, that you don't need that requirement if you want to be a Nibblemancer. Your high Constitution will serve you well. On top of that, the main mechanic of this class, in addition to the magic item which levels up with them, which is a magical cookbook, their spell book is a cookbook, are these recipes which they cook things, and that exists in D&D. There's the chef feat, which I think is out of Tasha's, which on a long rest or a short rest, you're able to prepare a meal, and that provides temporary hit points for people based on your maybe based on your intellect proficiency score. Maybe it's on your proficiency score or your spellcasting ability. That's fine. I don't want to do anything that overlaps with that or duplicates that, because let's say you're already let's say you're a level 8 fighter. You just picked up the chef feat. You're very happy with it. You want to you want to take one level dip into Nibblemancy. I'm definitely going to overpronounce it now, James. Then you're going to take a level 1 dip into Nibblemancy, and that I don't want them to pick something up that will overlap that. Now they will if they like a Constitution proficiency, that will overlap, but so be it. but I think this is pretty. I think this will be fun. Oh, and talking about the subclasses, so the two main unique qualities, I'd say, for this subclass: Constitution-based wizards, all their Constitution being their spellcasting ability, and when you multi-class, you get a unique recipe that only Nibblemancies and fighters get, or Nibblemancies and rogues, or that combination. Each one unlocks a unique recipe that makes the other class better. It might double the duration of an effect that other class has, double the effectiveness of something. So then the recipe that you can cook up just for yourself is something that makes that other class better. So not a force multiplier, but a little bit. Baked goods equals more hit points. That's kind of what they do now with the chef feed. You cook something and it gives them temporary hit points. And temporary hit points are kind of weak because temporary hit points are kind of a fixed well of hit points, whereas the heroism effect and the inspiring leader, and there's a bunch of other things that can give you temporary hit points, and that is a singular bucket that temporary hit points go into, and they don't stack with each other. Whereas other spells like aid give you actual hit points that are not temporary. And temporary hit points you can't heal back to their maximum. So like a temporary hit points, let's say you have 10 extra temporary hit points. You lose those 10 hit points, you can't get healed back up to those. Those temporarily are gone. Whereas the hit points you gain from the aid spell, you can heal back up to. So there's things like that. I think it's gonna be a really fun subclass. Did you already explain why Nibblemancies must be Sweetcaster? Oh, there can be. I thought the illustration, I like the idea of the baking, just because it's more fun, and because in the Middle Age, when we see King Aether cooking things up as part of his Nibblemancy, it's almost always been desserts. So to me, it's largely been baking. There's going to be soups, there's going to be heartier things like that. I also shied away from meats, in a way that has sensitivity for people who don't eat meats. It tends to get bloodier. I think having desserts on the cover make it automatically friendlier. So it doesn't have to be that. There'll be recipes for other things. Potatoes. JRD. Is there a 2-page section for savory? No, it'll be a mix of all the recipes. Like, I gotta think of a barbarian, it's gonna be something like with but I like the idea of there being the trouble is it'd be real easy to set up some of these things where you have to get a specific ingredient to create the recipe, and that gives you quests. It's a lot like spell components, and I feel like because this is a wizard subclass, whoever's playing a wizard is used to the concept of having to go, okay, this spell is going to need X amount of diamond dust or X amount of this. So saying that you need an egg, I don't feel like I want to specifically say the kind of egg. As much fun as it might be to say it needs, I don't want to say an owlbear egg, because I don't know how sentient owlbears are and how weird that gets. I'll leave that to Cave in his book. But I think I don't want to tell people how their campaign world needs to be. That suddenly they've designed a world that has no. I don't know. I think I can assume things. I can assume eggs exist, but I don't want to presume that certain kind of creatures exist in order to make this one particular effect work. So, there'll be a note in there for the book of letting people play with it however they want to. Invite them to make it particular to themselves. Broccoli Revolts. Well, Broccoli Rob, is that the character from Leon? I think that is. That character's got a head of broccoli. But yeah, I think that'll be the whole thing will be super fun. But I'm really happy with how it's come out. It might be my favorite cover yet. The cover for the Death Dealing book had a elf or half elven woman, or half human woman, if you come at it from the elven perspective like I do. And this was definitely meant to be a dwarven character. But I almost, in the versions, if you see, if you go to Nibblemancy.com, you can queue up to be alerted when the campaign goes live. I think there's 240 people already queued up. What's really interesting is the campaign was tagged with Zine Quest. I don't know if it'll keep that tag when it goes live, because there was some other project that started after Zine Quest was over, but it kept the tag. I don't know. I'm presuming they've gone through and stripped that by now. Parfaits. As a former cook, I approve. Yeah, and no, absolutely. Going back to D&D during the pandemic, during the heights of the pandemic, and going and watching tons, and actually learning how to bake during the pandemic also was an inspiration. All that Great British Baking Show. You know, they had meat pies and things like that, savory items, but I just wanted things that were colorful. Meat products and breads just tend to be very brown and not all that bright. I wanted things with icing and sprinkles and stuff like that. But if you look at the placeholder for Nibblemancy right now, it has a font which is the exact same font as Intoximancy, and I didn't want to do that. I want each one of these covers to have their own unique font, their own unique design, flavor, no pun. But I'm really happy with this one. It's got, I don't know, it's got a magic to it. It had to be an extremely narrow font to work. The original font is a bit squatter than this, so I've stretched it vertically, but I think it works. I don't think Todd Klein will be upset by how much I've distorted the original person's font. And I did some other things, resized a few things. But yeah, I feel really good about it. I think I can launch this campaign, and it's going to, like I told people at the SC Comic Con when I handed them this book, like the idea is that this is meant to feel legit, so you can hand this to your dungeon master and they'll let you get away with it. You know, this is Exhibit A in your attempt to convince somebody to play this silly stuff. Steve totally didn't base his on this. Wait, on what? What I missed there? How about some ingredient modifiers? So eggs can be swapped for dragon owlbear. That comes with effects and positive something. Bases on this, definitely not. Kind of surprised the character wasn't designed to be an elven Julia child. That page with stuff like no flour, use sawdust. Yeah, absolutely, David. Stuff like that could be great. I mean, part of the book is going to be magic spells. I've got a bunch of those. Chocolate bomb. Things like a chicken soup, something that reduces the duration of negative effects but doesn't eliminate them. I think, or can reduce the severity of an effect. It doesn't remove a curse, but maybe lessens its effect. Like it reduces the amount of damage, or cuts the duration in half. I guess YouTube doesn't allow links. Links to the Kickstarter. Oh, to Flavor Text Adventures. I don't think it was influenced by it, because again, this is pulled out of the Middle Age, and I don't think we had met when I had started doing the Middle Age, and King Aether. But no, and also I kind of feel like you need to have. What I like about knowing about your book, and I think this is something that a lot of people worry about. Someone says, I'm not going to read comics because I'm going to be influenced by it. I think you read a lot so you know to stay away from stuff. Like, seeing Flavor Text Adventures to me meant, oh, don't do what Cave's done, because someone's already done it. So what's the point? I feel like that's the reason why because I think younger people just don't. New creators don't get that. They don't get the idea. Someone says, because it feels self-serving. So, like a science fiction writers, when I just started, when I was much younger writing sci-fi, they'd all say, "Well, read sci-fi." Well, I'm not gonna. If I read their stuff, I'm just gonna get inspired by it. Or are they just trying to sell me books? But I feel like exposing yourself to what everyone else is doing helps you, know what everyone else has done. Reading everything just means that you know you're not gonna don't do the same thing everyone else has done. Oh boy, wait! I lost my chat. Where is my chat? Cockatrice. Any fun items? Horn of Plenty. There's some stuff. There's a bunch of things. The creatures like the gelatinous dessert. That one's easy. That one's just easy because D&D has a gelatinous cube, and there's just dumb. There'll be dumb stuff thematically tied to it. One of the things when sometimes people think, oh, it's just full of puns and dad jokes, and I hope it's not that. I don't mind getting a laugh for that stuff, but I want it to be well constructed game content. Like I want it to be something that is super, like the guy came up to me at SC Comic Con, said, I used Cheers cantrip, I love it. It's very stupid, but it's great. That's the, I want it to be smart but dumb. Does that make any sense? I want it to be silly, but well engineered. I'm obviously joking, Steve. Oh no, but I don't think it's I recognize that's what I recognize that, Cave, but I think it's worth thinking about. I think creators sometimes will put on blinders to other content and then just do what somebody else has done, and then wonder why no one's into it. Like when umpteenth vampire detective stories. I can't tell you how many friends I have in comics who have told me their idea about a detective story, and then at the end of the issue there's a supernatural twist. Okay, do it well, do it really well, and it'll be great. But the idea that they say that they like it's a detective and it's all this stuff's happening and he's on the case and it's gonna figure it out and the pieces are coming together and then the end, vampires. Like it's like everyone watching that, they're gonna know that from the cover because you're gonna give the name. It's gonna be called, Bite Club or something. It'll have some name that they know. So the idea that you're building it up to a twist that make it good, make the dialogue snappy or something like that. Grab them on page. I don't know. The only way to do that is at the end of the series, the detective finds that he was a vampire. Dude, you just blew my mind. DG, so nice to see you. I miss us. Oh, I miss all of us. But Steve sarcasm. No, well, again, just talking about the cave thing. The idea that two people doing something that's analogous, absolutely fine. I think it's a thing where you just know that. I think I think creators should be gracious to one another and not step on each other's toes. I think that's also an important courtesy. I honestly think that that's an important courtesy, that two people who are working on something that is analogous to one another. I found that was the case when I saw, what was it? The trilogy tour that Jeff Smith, Charles Vess, Linda Medley, Stan Sakai. Am I missing anybody? They had a tour back in the 90s. They would go to conventions, and 3 more backers from 200. Cave's Kickstarter, 2 days to go. Are we down to 48 hours yet, Cave? But those creators got together and they all kind of cross promoted each other. I remember Stephen Blue, who had Image Series. See, Cave, at that 48-hour mark, you're gonna get a jump. You're gonna get a jump in backers, because that's when Kickstarter sends out that notification, and then again at 8 hours out. Where Vess was, I think Jill Thompson was too. Yes, David. Yeah, that was great. They supported each other, but I don't think they necessarily had to avoid stepping on each other's toes. But I just think that's like a professional courtesy. So this is the cover so far. Like Dave was talking about, I'm going to adjust things, like the proportions of things, the balance of things. I have all the iced things are on all the pink iced things are on the left, and the baked things are on the right. I was happy with that cookie. I think that could be confused for a cookie. And super happy with that oven mitt. That's ridiculous. And I think he could be confused for a chef. And again, the color. That back window is exactly what I wanted. That just feels like D&D colors to me. It feels like a red dragon. It got a really strong fantasy quality. Look to the cookie. I like making those. They take some effort. They take some effort. Sim might have been on that stage too. I don't know. I don't think he was for some reason. And at 3 minutes from the end, you'll finish the drawing, post it, and we'll get... I'm not going to finish it before the campaign's over. I'm just going to share works in progress and keep sending people your way, because, yeah, you're a... Cave, by the way, amazing wingman at a comic, at Gamehole Con. When he was at my booth, people would come up, he's like, you should read it, check this out, hold it up. He was confident about my work the way I wasn't. So, anything I could do to send people your way. Anything. Yeah, I'm going to lean Quimp forward a little bit, because I do like the body language of him leaning forward. So, I just want to make sure the shoulder's in the right place. Forward, that one's back. Let's put this leg forward. We'll do kind of a more Asterix, Karl Barks stance to the feet, where we see the bottom of the foot, kind of ridiculous cartoony movement. I got a lot to do here. Plus we'll make some fun trees, and they'll all be in shadow, and that will create the nice canopy effect over the whole thing. And then maybe we'll put a monster or two hidden in the trees. Yeah, I think the people who created at Gamehole Con, they just had their 10th show. I think they know they have stepped in it with the name. But the amount of my friends on Facebook and the silly reactions, the adolescent reaction. It's amazing. It's wonderful. All right, so I said at the start of this to myself that I have real trouble sketching and drawing from the get-go on the stream, because part of it is that normally social media lets us curate how we're seen. Like you'll only see the good stuff. You know, that's what people get intimidated when they see the portfolios of artists online, because you don't see the garbage. And I don't like sharing my garbage. And there's a lot of garbage before I get to anything presentable. figuring out the angles of things, figuring out the flow of a piece, drawing it 50 times. David makes it look easy. There is so learning karate has been fun. Again, I talked about it before, about the gamification of it, the idea that you progress through, like you level up with belts and striped belts and the various colors. But watching some of the people who created these forms and created these various combinations, moves that I'll study eventually. There are videos of them, like from the 70s and 80s, performing them like for the first time. Like they put these things together, they synthesize these things, you can tell there's outtakes. There's a bit where they start doing something and the film cuts, like clear they messed up. And I feel like there's not the kind of like, oh damn it, like there isn't any of that, but there is the sense of, oh, they make mistakes too. And I find that heartening. So I do have the STL file of among the things I've been working on, in addition to Nibblemancy and getting the Prayer's Handbook printed and looking delightful, if I say so myself. I can't wait for everyone to get it. I 3D sculpted Maledicta at full size, so like a 29-inch blade. So I will print it and gotta slice it into pieces, hopefully in a way that it'll snap together. I want it to print without supports if I can do that, because that tends to be the biggest pain in the butt with any kind of printing project, is that you have to have some sort of various tree supports or structures that keep things that, you have to do anything that's going to defy gravity or float off the platform has to be supported by a support somewhere. But I want to print that in pieces, and then I think that'll be something I'll go to my Patreon supporters. And then if I can make enough of them, I don't think it'll weigh a lot, because I've been printing lately with this much lighter infill, like a 10%, meaning that if you were to crack open one of these sculpts, you would see this lattice. It doesn't. A 3D print doesn't print like a solid block of plastic. Oh, not a solid block of plastic. I had one of the other two books kind of perched there. I hadn't glued it together yet. But inside here is not a solid block of plastic. If you were to bisect it, you'd see a grid, and that the density of that grid is the infill, and I think 15% is the default, but you can go lower than 10 or 7, and so it's quite light. It's not so it's full of air. And the idea that with this sword, I want to make it very lightweight. I'm going to have large I guess there's a term for it, like a snap together point, where it will snap in places. So I'll build those into the design, I hope, so that when people print these, they can just snap the pieces together. They can glue them, ideally put glue down and then snap them together, and the snap should hopefully make everything line up perfectly. The problem with the sword, is that down the length of the sword there are glyphs. I have drawn them inconsistently throughout. It's magic. That's my get out of jail free card. It's magic. So the glyphs run along the length of it, and I can't make the glyphs. In some cases I've drawn the glyphs on the sword like 6 rows of glyphs. Most often, I think 4 rows of glyphs, but a lot of glyphs. That might be too much. It might increase the requirement of the file to be just enormous, and the printers will choke because you just can't send that much data through the pipe into the printer. And then if you did, the quality would degrade, so it wouldn't be the sharp edges. This is not going to be this will be a blunt instrument, but it will look like a good sword when you hang it up. I don't know if I want to have glyphs on both sides of the sword, because again, that will probably double the file size, and I don't want to make people print halves of it and put it all together. But I do think if I have glyphs on half of it, I don't think anyone's going to cosplay as Sir Quim. And if they did, then they could figure all this out, because they're already craftier than I am. But if the glyphs are on one side, then it can, you know, it can hang where it's supposed to behind me in that space. So, finishing in time for Halloween. Have you seen those collapsible swords for 3D printing? Yeah, I have seen those. The problem with the Maledicta doesn't taper like that, and Maledicta has the notches. It also has this kind of weird presumed beveling, which I'm not sure geometrically how that is supposed to work. So I'm kind of faking that part. I'm going to treat this sword like a standard blade where it has this kind of taper to it. Which was not easy to do, but it took some time to do it, but it worked so far. Steve, I just signed up for your OnlyFans, but you may not understand that we were... Cave, I feel like a proud parent. I still remember little Steve struggling to create random lumps in Nomad Sculpt, and now look at him talking about data and snap-on sculpts. You are the proud papa. Must run and ironically go make dinner. JRD, so good to see you. I miss us. I appreciate it, JRD. Love to everyone there. Moose, sign up for my OnlyFans. It's meant to be. You got to Nibblemancy and sign up, Moose. That's where all the good stuff is. And Patreon. Oh, my Patreon. Oh, full of great stuff. Amazing stuff. Patreon.com/SteveConley. Cave is the ornery papa. Anywho. Well, I'm going to keep working on this thing. I'm going to show you the cover of Nibblemancy one more time. The work in progress. The good enough for the campaign. I think this is the best cover yet. I don't think it's as graphically interesting as a Prayer's Handbook, because the Prayer's Handbook has that kind of meta thing going on in the bottom corner. But I'm so happy with how this came out. I think this cover is different enough, and it's almost more classic. Like, the color scheme is so Jeff Easley and that Unearthed Arcana. I feel like that's it just in the color palette. It's a nod to Jeff Easley. The rendering, no. The rendering doesn't hold a candle to his work. He's a genius, and I am but a third rate at best. But do support the campaign. It's fantastic. It's not like I taught you. Oh, you totally did. You totally did. You were. I had the little training wheels, and you ran alongside me, and then you let me go, and then I fell, and I was crying, and then you got the Bactine, and then I stopped crying, and then you punched me, and I was like, "You're so mean." None of that. Most of that's not true. All right, you lovely people. It's 6 o'clock. I am done. I've been on Twitch too long. Thank you all so much. You're fantastic. You are lovely people. You are. You have a healthy glow and are symmetrical in feature. And I'm very happy to have seen you. I will not be a stranger. I'll be back on. Nibblemancy is going to launch soon. Do go to nibblemancy.com and sign up. And do support our friends on Kickstarter and other places like that, like Cave Geek Art and his Flavor Text Adventures, which will include, when it is printed, a illustration by me, if it's good enough. The competition is stiff. Lovely to see you all. Lovely to see you all, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. You're a delight. Wait, should we raid anybody? I haven't raided anybody forever. Who should we raid? I'm out of practice. Whoa, I got a new backer. Who on Patreon is a nice. Well, did one of you back me? Did one of you people revealing your true identity to me? You are delightful. All right. Well, I will see you all. We're not gonna read. You print those sculpts however you want to print those sculpts. That's my nudes. I drew this page nude. It's just a page of comics, but I just tell you I drew it nude. Yeah, let's raid somebody. We can raid somebody. I know what I'm doing. That means I have to open up. So, David, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, I updated my operating system, my Mac operating system. Trisha is great. Art by Trisha Hall. Okay, I don't know Trisha, but I hear she's great. Don't have to wear pants. Every time I stream, I wear an extra pair of pants. 2ply was originally the name of this. 2ply Steve was the original name of my channel here on Twitch. I don't know. Can I raid from inside the interface of Stream Elements? Frozen in time. Don't ever update. Don't ever. No, I feel like I'm very happy with the benefits. Well, the main problem was Safari stopped working. And there are benefits to having Safari because I use it on my. I know it's a terrible browser. It's mediocre, but the way it synergizes with my iPad and my iPhone is too great. Currently, wherever my iPad is, in relation to my desktop, I can move my mouse. Will it work? I can move my computer mouse, and it will go and it'll affect my iPad. So the ability of copying files, dragging files to my iPad, dragging files off of my iPad, copy and pasting from various devices. There's a lot of benefit to it. All right. Okay. Hey, I'm logged in. Dandy. I know what I'm doing. It doesn't. But it doesn't help with wanting to keep. Ooh. Oh, good. I muted myself. Yay. All right. Who are we raiding? Raid. Art by Trisha Hall. But I have to view Twitch on Chrome, the Chrome browser. So Art by Trisha Hall. Art by capital B. Art by Trisha Hall. I'm assuming the question mark's not part of her name. All right, you lovely people. Let's go raid and see what happens. Invalid name. What did I do wrong? Oh, got it. This channel is intended for mature audiences. Brace yourself, everybody. Thank you all for being here. You're lovely. And I will see you next time. And join me over on Discord. We'll chat there.